The victory that wasn't. Ethan Reynolds adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror of his downtown apartment and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The breakup with Harper Sullivan had been his idea, and he had executed it perfectly with the precision of a closing argument in court. He told his roommate Marcus that walking away first meant winning, and Ethan Reynolds always won. Harper had been too ambitious, too driven, too focused on her career at the marketing firm to appreciate what they had, or so he convinced himself. 6 weeks had passed since that rainy October evening when he told her they wanted different things, and that maybe they were better off apart. She had looked at him with those green eyes full of hurt, but she did not cry or beg, and somehow that made him feel even more in control. Tonight was the annual Heritage Foundation Gala at the Plaza, and Ethan had been invited through his law firm, Sterling and Associates. He wore his best Tom Ford suit, the navy one that Harper always said made his eyes look impossibly blue, and he planned to network and remind Manhattan's elite why he was one of the most promising young attorneys in the city. Marcus drove them to the venue, and Ethan felt the familiar rush of confidence as they walked through the golden doors into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and men in tuxedos mingled with women draped in silk and diamonds. Ethan grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and scanned the room for senior partners and potential clients. Then he saw her. Harper stood near the grand staircase, wearing a stunning red gown that hugged her curves and caught the light with every movement. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and her smile was radiant. But it was not her beauty that made Ethan freeze. It was the man beside her. Tall, broad-shouldered with silver streaks in his dark hair, and an aura of power that seemed to command the entire room. Ethan recognized him immediately because everyone did. Nathaniel Drake, billionaire tech mogul philanthropist and one of the most eligible bachelors in America. Harper laughed at something Nathaniel said and placed her hand on his arm with an ease that sent a jolt of something unfamiliar through Ethan's chest. Jealousy, regret, panic. Marcus noticed his friend's expression and followed his gaze before letting out a low whistle. Harper looked up at that exact moment, and her eyes locked with Ethan's across the crowded ballroom. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Harper smiled politely, turned back to Nathaniel, and walked deeper into the gala as if Ethan Reynolds did not exist at all. And just like that, Ethan realized his victory had been an illusion. The billionaire's world. Ethan tried to focus on conversations with his colleagues, but his eyes kept drifting toward Harper and Nathaniel as they glided through the gala like royalty. Marcus nudged him hard in the ribs and told him to stop staring, but Ethan could not help himself. He watched as Nathaniel introduced Harper to a senator, then to a Hollywood actress, and then to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. She fit into this world of wealth and influence as if she had always belonged there, laughing at the right moments, speaking with confidence and grace. Ethan remembered how she used to stress about making rent on their small apartment, and how she would eat ramen for dinner to save money for her student loans. Now she wore diamonds that probably cost more than his car. He downed his third glass of champagne and decided he needed to talk to her to prove to himself that she had not completely moved on. Against Marcus's protests, Ethan weaved through the crowd until he was standing just a few feet behind Harper. She was mid-conversation with an elderly philanthropist when Nathaniel noticed Ethan first. His blue-gray eyes assessed Ethan with the cool precision of someone who had built an empire by reading people. Nathaniel smiled politely and introduced himself, though of course, Ethan already knew exactly who he was. Harper turned, and her expression flickered with surprise before settling into something carefully neutral. Ethan managed to say hello and asked how she had been doing. Harper's response was polite but distant, telling him she had been wonderful and that her career had taken some exciting new directions. Nathaniel placed a protective hand on the small of her back and mentioned that Harper had just been promoted to creative director at her firm, thanks in part to some consulting work she had done for Drake Industries. Ethan's congratulations sounded hollow, even to his own ears. The conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like an eternity of awkward pleasantries and unspoken tension. A photographer approached asking if he could take a photo of Nathaniel and Harper for the society pages. They posed together with natural chemistry, Harper leaning into Nathaniel's embrace, while his arm wrapped around her waist possessively. Ethan stood frozen as the camera flashed, capturing their perfect, glamorous couple image for the world to see. When the photographer left, Nathaniel excused them both, saying they had promised to join the mayor's table for dinner. Harper met Ethan's eyes one last time, and for just a second, he thought he saw something there. Sadness, maybe, or regret. But then Nathaniel guided her away, and she was laughing again, radiant and unreachable. Marcus found Ethan standing alone near the champagne fountain, looking like he had just lost the biggest case of his career. Ethan realized that Harper had not just moved on. She had ascended to a level he could never reach. And the worst part was that she seemed genuinely happy. Part 3. Haunted by what was. Ethan could not sleep that night because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Harper in that red dress, smiling up at Nathaniel Drake. His apartment felt smaller and shabbier than usual, and the silence was deafening. Ugh. He grabbed his phone at 3 in the morning and scrolled through Harper's social media, even though he knew it would only make things worse. Her Instagram had transformed in the past 6 weeks. Gone were the casual coffee shop selfies and book recommendations. Now her feed showcased art gallery openings, charity events, and exotic locations. There was a photo of her and Nathaniel at a vineyard in Napa Valley, another of them at a Broadway premiere, and one from what looked like a private island. Ethan tossed his phone across the room and stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. He had convinced himself that breaking up with Harper was the right move, that her ambition would eventually clash with his career plans. Now she was dating someone whose ambition made hers look quaint, and Ethan was the one left behind. Monday morning at the office was torture because everyone was talking about the gala. His colleague Jennifer mentioned seeing Harper Sullivan with Nathaniel Drake and said they looked absolutely smitten. Another partner joked that Drake had excellent taste in women. Ethan buried himself in case files, trying to forget, but his mind kept wandering back to the way Harper had looked at Nathaniel with genuine affection. By Wednesday, he broke down and called Marcus to meet for drinks after work. Over bourbon at their favorite bar, Ethan finally admitted what he had been avoiding. He had made a terrible mistake. Marcus listened as Ethan confessed that he had broken up with Harper, not because they wanted different things, but because he had been scared. Scared that she would outgrow him. Scared that her success would make him feel inadequate. Scared that loving her meant risking everything. Marcus told him that fear was no excuse for throwing away something real. And now Harper had found someone who was not afraid, someone who celebrated her ambition instead of feeling threatened by it. Ethan asked if it was too late to fix things. Marcus did not answer right away. Finally, he said that Ethan needed to figure out what he actually wanted, because chasing Harper now might just be about ego and losing. Ethan knew his friend was right, but knowing did not make the ache in his chest any less painful. That night, he walked past the coffee shop where he and Harper used to meet every Sunday morning. Through the window, he could see a young couple laughing over lattes, completely absorbed in each other. He and Harper used to be like that once, before he let pride and fear ruin everything. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets and headed home. Somewhere across the city, Harper was probably at some exclusive restaurant or penthouse suite, living a life he could only imagine. And he had no one to blame but himself. Crossing paths again. 3 weeks passed, and Ethan threw himself into work, taking on extra cases, and staying late at the office to avoid thinking about Harper. But Manhattan was not big enough to keep them apart forever. On a cold November afternoon, Ethan left a client meeting in Midtown and decided to walk back to his office to clear his head. The streets were crowded with holiday shoppers, and the first decorations of the season were already appearing in store windows. He turned a corner near Bryant Park and nearly collided with someone coming out of a boutique. Harper. She wore a camel coat and carried shopping bags from designer stores, her cheeks flushed from the cold. For a moment, they both froze on the sidewalk as people rushed past them. Harper spoke first, asking if he was doing well. Her voice was kind but guarded. Ethan said he was fine and asked about her work. The conversation was stilted and formal, nothing like the easy banter they used to share. Harper mentioned she was shopping for a trip, and Ethan felt his stomach drop, knowing she probably meant a trip with Nathaniel. Before he could stop himself, Ethan asked if she was happy. Really happy. Harper's expression softened, and she studied his face as if trying to decide how honest to be. Finally, she said yes, that Nathaniel treated her with respect and encouraged her dreams in ways she had not experienced before. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow because he knew exactly what she meant. He had been the one who made her feel like her ambition was a burden instead of a gift. Harper then said something that surprised him. She told him that leaving their relationship had hurt more than he probably realized, but that it had also freed her to become the person she was meant to be. Ethan wanted to tell her everything, that he was sorry that he had been a fool, that he still thought about her every single day. But before he could speak, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, and Harper glanced at her watch, apologizing that she had to go. Nathaniel was waiting for her at his office. Ethan touched her arm gently and told her he was glad she was happy, even if his voice did not sound convincing. Harper looked at him with something that might have been pity or compassion, and said she hoped he would find happiness too. Then she slipped into the car and was gone. Ethan watched the vehicle disappear into traffic and felt the full weight of his loss settle over him. He had spent weeks telling himself that seeing Harper again would give him closure. Instead, it only made him realize how much he still loved her. That evening, Ethan did something he had not done in months. He pulled out an old shoebox from his closet filled with photos and mementos from their relationship. Concert tickets, restaurant receipts, handwritten notes Harper had left on his bathroom mirror. He went through each item, remembering the inside jokes and quiet moments and stolen kisses. They had been happy once, really happy, and he had destroyed it because he was too afraid to let himself be vulnerable. Marcus called later, asking if he wanted to grab dinner, but Ethan declined. He needed to be alone with his regrets. As he lay in bed that night, Ethan made a decision. He could not change the past, but maybe he could at least apologize properly and give Harper the closure she deserved, even if it meant accepting that she belonged with someone else now. Tomorrow, he would reach out. Tomorrow, he would finally be honest. Part 5. The Heart's True Path. Ethan spent Thursday morning drafting and deleting emails to Harper, trying to find the right words. Nothing felt adequate. Finally, he decided a letter would be better, more personal, and harder to ignore. He spent his lunch break in a quiet cafe writing everything he had been too proud to say before. He apologized for making her feel like her dreams were too big for their relationship. He admitted that his fear of not being enough had poisoned what they had. He told her that seeing her happy with Nathaniel had taught him what real love looked like, supporting someone without conditions or limitations. Ethan did not ask her to come back because he knew that ship had sailed. He simply wanted her to know the truth. Friday afternoon, he had the letter delivered to Harper's office by courier. Then he waited. Days passed with no response, and Ethan tried to accept that maybe she had simply moved on completely. The following Wednesday evening, Ethan was alone at his office, reviewing contracts, when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was Harper. She asked if he could meet her at their old coffee shop the next morning. Ethan barely slept that night, running through 1,000 scenarios in his mind. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Ethan walked into the coffee shop and found Harper already seated at their old corner table by the window. She wore jeans and a sweater, looking more like the girl he had fallen in love with in college than the glamorous woman from the gala. They ordered coffee, and for a few minutes just sat in comfortable silence. Harper finally broke it by thanking him for the letter. She said it meant more than he knew because she had spent months wondering if he had ever really cared. Ethan told her he had cared more than he knew how to express, that losing her had been the worst mistake of his life. Harper's eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She explained that meeting Nathaniel had shown her what she deserved, someone who celebrated her success and pushed her to dream bigger. Ethan said Nathaniel seemed like a good man. Harper agreed, But then she said something unexpected. She told Ethan that despite everything, despite the luxury and excitement, something had been missing. The easy intimacy, the shared history, the feeling of being truly known. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Harper said that seeing him again had stirred up feelings she thought she had buried. That reading his letter had made her question everything. But she also said she could not go backward, that too much had changed. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. He told her he did not want to go backward either, that they had both grown and learned and become better versions of themselves. What if they started fresh as different people with hard-won wisdom about what really mattered? Harper's tears finally fell, and she squeezed his hand. She said she needed time, that she owed Nathaniel honesty, and could not just jump from one relationship to another. Ethan said he would wait, however long it took. They left the coffee shop together and walked through the park as snow began to fall. Harper pointed out that this felt like a scene from a movie. Ethan said maybe some stories deserved a second chance at their ending. Before they parted ways, Harper kissed him on the cheek and promised to call soon. Ethan stood in the snow and watched her walk away. But this time, it felt different. This time, it felt like a beginning, not an ending, because he had learned that love was not about winning or losing. It was about having the courage to be vulnerable, to support without conditions, and to believe that sometimes the heart knows the way home, even when the path is complicated, even when it takes time. The story was not over. It was just finally heading in the right direction.